Over 1,000 racehorses died on Irish tracks in the past decade. That's according to figures released to this programme by the Irish Horse Racing Regulatory Board. They show that between 2012 and 2022, 1,060 racehorse fatalities occurred at Irish racecourses. That's 40% higher than the UK when measured as a percentage of fatalities to runners. In a moment, we'll speak with John Osborne from Horse Racing Ireland, the governing body for the sport. But first, I'm joined in studio by Paul Murphy, People Before Profit TD for Dublin South West, who's been raising questions about this issue in the Dáil. Paul Murphy, good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. 1,060 racehorses died at Irish racetracks over 10 years. Last year, the number was 107. The year before that was 113. What do you make of these numbers?
I think these are very concerning. I think people who watch horse racing or don't watch horse racing will be concerned at the number of horses that are dying at our tracks or shortly within 48 hours thereafter as a result of injuries they've sustained. And I think the numbers are particularly concerning when compared to Britain, where we have, quite a substantially higher proportion of fatalities of horses at racetracks. So I think what's posed is the need for an independent investigation to establish what the cause of this is. I think there are some things, if you compare Britain to Ireland, which might suggest what the cause is. We have a higher percentage of jump racing in Ireland. Jump racing is substantially more dangerous. We know in Britain 7 times more fatalities per runner from jump racing than flat racing. Secondly, the number of runners per event, per race. It's substantially higher in Ireland than in Britain, about 25 per race, in Ireland about 10 in Britain, which again is likely to be leading to this. So we need an investigation and to establish what the cause is.
The regulator for the Horse Racing Board, the IRHB, which provided these figures, it said that a comprehensive project is underway now to identify risk factors associated with racehorse deaths, and that project will make recommendations to see if those risks can be mitigated. Is that something you welcome?
Well, let's have that investigation and let's have a report on it. I do suspect that really there are fundamental dangers involved in jump racing which can't be mitigated as long as you're engaging in horses in jump racing. So I think that needs to be part of the conversation.
But what are you suggesting then? Fewer, no jump races?
Well, I think that's something that needs to be considered, yes. I think, do we want to continue to see over 100 horses dying a year? And also I think linked to this is the question of public funding. Obviously we know over 70 million euros going this year to Horse Racing Ireland. And I think it is bad that Horse Racing Ireland do not keep these figures. I requested them from Horse Racing Ireland and they said we don't have these figures. You can check the report that was released about a week ago by HRI, no mention of the deaths, or you can check the annual report which has all the facts about what's happening in horse racing in Ireland and doesn't mention these deaths. And I think, even those who will be horse racing fans would, I presume, agree that this is the kind of thing that should be kept account of.
All right, Paul Murphy, thank you for talking to us. Stay with us for now. We're also joined in studio by John Osborne, Director of Equine Welfare at Horse Racing Ireland. John, good afternoon and thank you for joining us today. These figures, they show that racehorse fatalities 40% higher in Ireland than in the UK when you measure on a pro rata basis. Why are the UK tracks safer than Irish tracks? Is it, as Paul Murphy says, because we have more jump racing?
We're currently working with Professor Tim Parkin, who is the world-leading expert on this subject, and one of his proteges, Sarah Rosanowski, is based in New Zealand. There are a large number, Tim would say 300 factors that contribute to the outcomes that we see on the racecourse, and our project will try to focus in on the elements of that we can mitigate.
But many of those factors would be similar in the UK, where the differences emerge.
It's interesting at a glance.
Is where perhaps you should be looking, isn't it?
Yeah, well, at a glance that would be that you could say that. But there are some very major differences between British and Irish racing. The most obvious one is that they have 6 all-weather tracks. We have just 1 all-weather track. And, part of our strategy is to develop a second all-weather track. We have a different mix of races because we are a producing and selling nation. In fact, thoroughbreds are our 5th biggest agricultural export. And to put the numbers in context, I mean, in that time range that Paul refers to, there were 330,000 starters in that time range. We had over 90,000 thoroughbred foals were born in that same date range. And, our standard population is somewhere in the region of 45,000 thoroughbreds on the island of Ireland. So the context is important.
Yes, and here's another number, €72 million in public money that Horse Racing Ireland receives every year from the government. And yet, we're not hearing in your annual report, in the reports that was done this week, any expression of concern about the deaths, of the high number of deaths of racehorses on tracks.
Every death is regrettable, but we have been working for years on this subject and do anything in our power to mitigate the risk. And there's some huge examples of that, like, Wexford Racecourse used to run clockwise but down the hill. Now it races anti-clockwise up the hill because that's a safer scenario for the horses. Dundalk Racecourse invested heavily in relaying its track surface the year before last. A 7-figure investment purely driven by safety. We put in a new sprint track in Cork Racecourse, and that's the category of races that's probably underrepresented in Irish racing, which is sprinters. There's a lot of sprint racing in England, which is a low risk category.
And yet, those mitigation factors put in, but the figures show that the number of deaths is actually increasing.
No, the trend is quite.
It's as high as it ever was.
It has been similar over a period of time, but similar to jurisdictions abroad, including when we apply the same profile to the British numbers, we end up on a par with them. It's difficult to get to a zero risk outcome, but it is something that we work tirelessly on. Remember that the safety of our horses is linked inextricably with the safety of our personnel, and our jockeys are superheroes for doing what they do, and their safety is also paramount to us.
How do you respond then to Paul Murphy's the case he makes for a reduction or a banning of jump racing to protect horses?
Jump racing is in our heritage, and again I'd put some context around it. Honeysuckle is one of the most famous racehorses we've produced in recent years. In 9 years as a racehorse, where she lived the life of an elite athlete, she competed on the racecourse for 90 minutes, the duration of one football match. She lived the life of Ronaldo in exchange for one football match in terms of duration on the racecourse. That's the life we give to our horses. And for us, the quality of the life is the most important factor. And our stable staff and everybody involved, we've 9,000 people full-time employed in the care of our horses. And, they are our frontline workers who are delivering a high standard of care to the lives of these horses.
Can you do more?
Obviously we can do more. I mean, we're constantly working on this. We're engaging internationally. There's a project underway, as Paul referred to, which is very interesting, and we collaborate extensively with every other racing jurisdiction. I'm on the board of the committee of the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities Welfare Committee, which works together on this across the world. There are 60 racing nations, and we're the leader in that group.
All right, John Osborne, Director of Equine Welfare at Horse Racing Ireland, thank you for talking to us today.